17 canned items are quietly coming off Walmart supply commitments, and the date isn't a matter of speculation anymore. It's written into the contract calendar. Not one item, not one aisle. 17 of them, all landing inside the same narrow window. I went through the quarterly filings and the recent earnings calls from the biggest names in shelf-stable food. Different companies, different categories, different executives sitting in different rooms. The story that came back was almost word for word identical every single time. Number 3 is the one that stops people cold. A brand that's been sitting on American shelves since 1898. And the thing coming for it is a steel tariff. Something virtually nobody standing in the soup aisle has ever spent a second thinking about. We'll get there. This countdown runs from the shortages you'll notice first, all the way down to the one you'd never see coming in 100 years. By the end, you'll know exactly which of these deserve a spot in your cart before August, and which ones you can safely ignore. Let's go. Number 17. Canned green beans and canned corn start here, because this is the category that makes the entire rest of the list make sense. Green beans and corn are the most boring cans in the store. They're domestic. The crop grows in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, New York. There's no exotic supply chain, no foreign processor, no shipping container crossing an ocean. They are about as insulated from global trade drama as a food product can possibly be. And they are still going up. That's the point. Because the vulnerability here has nothing to do with the vegetable. It's the can. The Section 232 tariffs on imported steel were reinstated at 25% effective January 1st, 2026. That's the headline number everybody saw. But here's what most people missed entirely. The Can Manufacturers Institute reported in February 2026 that domestic steel prices rose in response, because American steel producers adjusted their own pricing upward to match the new floor the tariffs created. That's what a tariff actually does. It doesn't just tax the import, it hands the domestic supplier permission to raise their number too. Why would you keep selling at $100 when your foreign competitor is suddenly forced to sell at $125? You wouldn't. Nobody would. So there is no cheap door left. Imported steel costs more. Domestic steel costs more in response. Now apply that to canned vegetables specifically. Green beans and corn are what the industry calls low-value, high-volume products. The contents are cheap, the can is not. Which means packaging represents an outsized share of the total cost per unit, far more than it does for, say, canned crab or premium soup, where the product inside dwarfs the value of the tin. When steel gets more expensive, the cheapest cans in the store feel it hardest. That's not intuitive, but it's exactly how the math works. Del Monte and Green Giant both operate on thin margins in this category, precisely because it's a price comparison item. Shoppers know what a can of corn should cost. That awareness is what has kept the price pinned down for years, and it's also what leaves processors with nowhere to hide when their input costs move. There's no smell to describe here. Open a can of green beans, and you get water and salt and a faint vegetal note. That's it. Nobody's writing poetry about it. But that's the entire reason it belongs at number 17. This is the plainest, least dramatic product in the store, and it is still caught in the machinery. If the pressure reaches this, it reaches everything. Pick up a few extra cans. They store for years. The price still reflects pre-tariff can costs, and it won't for much longer. Number 16. Canned peaches, same machinery. Different fruit. Canned peaches are overwhelmingly a domestic product. The vast majority of what sits on an American shelf came out of California's Central Valley, cling peaches, grown and processed largely within a few counties. So again, no import tariff story here, no foreign processor, no ocean freight, and again, the can. But peaches carry a second problem that green beans don't, and this is where it gets interesting. Cling peach acreage in California has been in a long, slow decline for over a decade. Growers have been pulling out peach trees and putting in almonds, pistachios, and wine grapes, crops with better per-acre returns and, critically, lower labor requirements at harvest. That's not a 2026 story. That's a 20-year story. But it means the category entered this tariff cycle with an already thin production base. There is no slack in the system. No spare capacity sitting idle, waiting to absorb a shock. When you stack a 25% steel cost increase on top of a shrinking grower base and a fruit that requires substantial water in a state where water allocation is a permanent political fight, you get a product with no cushion whatsoever. The processors know this. Del Monte's canned fruit operations have been consolidating for years. Facilities close, lines shut down. Every closure removes a little more flexibility from the system. Crack a can of peaches in heavy syrup, and you get that sweet, slightly metallic, entirely unmistakable smell. It's a childhood smell for a lot of people. Lunchboxes, church potlucks, hospital trays. It's also a product with a genuinely long shelf life, 2 to 4 years easily, and one of the few canned goods that kids will actually eat without a fight. Grab a few while the tag still reflects last season's pack. Number 15. Canned baked beans. Baked beans sit in a weird spot. They're cheap enough that nobody thinks about the price, and common enough that nobody imagines them disappearing. But they're exposed on two fronts simultaneously, and both of them are already moving. Front 1. The beans themselves. The 2025 dry bean harvest across the primary growing states, North Dakota, Michigan, Nebraska, Minnesota, came in 14% below the 5-year average. According to the USDA's November 2025 crop production summary, drought across the northern plains through July and August of 2025, tracked week by week by the U.S. Drought Monitor, cut yields in what was already a low acreage planting year. Bad growing conditions on top of a small planted footprint. That's the worst possible combination. And the USDA's March 2026 prospective plantings report showed producers weren't going back for those acres in 2026 either. Another below-average forecast nationally, as farmers kept rotating toward commodity crops with stronger immediate margins. 2 down years back-to-back is not a blip. It's a trend, and it takes at least 2 good years to unwind. Front 2. The can. Same steel story as everything else on this list. And baked beans, like green beans, are a low-value, high-volume product where the packaging is a serious chunk of the landed cost. Bush's Best dominates this category, and Bush's is a private company that doesn't do earnings calls, which means you get less advance warning here than you do with Campbell's or Hormel. The first signal most shoppers receive will be the price tag itself. Open a can of baked beans, and the smell is immediate and specific. Molasses, smoke, something faintly like brown sugar. It's a complete side dish that requires nothing but a pot. Buy a case. This is one of the highest calorie per dollar items in the entire store, and it is being squeezed from 2 directions at once. Number 14. Canned pumpkin. Here's a fact that genuinely startles people when they hear it. The overwhelming majority of canned pumpkin sold in the United States comes from a single company, processing a single specialized variety, grown in a single concentrated region, largely around Morton, Illinois, not mostly. Not a large share, effectively all of it. Libby's, owned by Nestle, runs the operation. And the pumpkin in the can isn't the pumpkin you carve, it's a specific tan-skin squash variety bred specifically for canning, grown under contract on farmland, within trucking distance of one facility. Now sit with what that means for risk. There is no second region. There is no backup supplier. If that growing area has a bad year, too much rain at planting, a wet fall that keeps harvest equipment out of the fields, a disease pressure event, there is no pivot. There is no alternate source to call. The entire national supply of a product that half the country buys in October and November flows through one geographic bottleneck. This has happened before. There have been years where canned pumpkin genuinely ran short on American shelves. And it wasn't a tariff or a trade dispute. It was rain in Illinois. Layer the steel can cost on top of that structural fragility, and you have a category with zero margin for error, heading into a year where every other input is already up. Canned pumpkin also has an unusual demand pattern that makes the whole thing worse. Demand is enormously seasonal, spiking in a 6-week window. That means processors have to guess right, months in advance, about a harvest they haven't brought in yet. Guess low and shelves empty in November. Guess high, and you're sitting on inventory. Open a can, and it's dense, deep orange, almost odorless until it hits heat. Then it's the smell everyone associates with a specific 2 months of the year. Here's the practical point. Canned pumpkin stores for 2 years or more, and the price in July has no idea what October is going to look like. Buy it now, out of season, at the boring summer price. This is the single most obvious arbitrage on this entire list, and almost nobody takes it. Number 13. Canned Vienna sausage. Vienna sausage is a punchline for a lot of people. It's the cheapest canned meat in the store. It comes in a can the size of a shot glass, and there's a persistent cultural assumption that it's not really food. That assumption is exactly why it's been underpriced for so long. And it is exactly the assumption that's about to get corrected. Vienna sausage is a pork product, primarily mechanically separated pork and chicken, but pork is the anchor. The USDA reported in January 2026 that U.S. hog inventory had declined 2.1% year over year, a continuation of a contraction that's been building since 2023, as producers pulled back after sustained losses during the previous cost cycle. Herds do not rebuild on command. Biology has its own timeline, and it does not care about a quarterly earnings call. A sow's gestation is what it is. When producers exit, capacity leaves the system for years, not months. Now here's the part specific to Vienna sausage, and it's a nasty one. That tiny can has a brutal can-to-product ratio. It might be the worst in the store. You are buying an enormous amount of steel relative to an extremely small amount of food, which means a 25% steel tariff hits this product harder per calorie delivered than almost anything else on the shelf. Cheap pork going up, expensive can going up, and a category with essentially no premium pricing room because the entire value proposition is that it's the cheapest thing available. When a product's whole identity is cheap and its costs rise, there are only two outcomes. The price breaks its own identity, or the product quietly leaves the shelf. Historically, retailers pick the second one. Vienna sausage has an unmistakable smell when you peel back the lid, soft, salty, faintly gelatinous. It is not a subtle product, and it has never pretended to be. But it stores for years. It needs no preparation whatsoever. And it delivers protein at a price point nothing else touches. Stock it while it's still treated like a joke by the market. We're about 1,000 words in. If this is already changing how you're thinking about the aisle, a quick like genuinely helps this reach more families. Up to you entirely. Number 12. Canned anchovies. Nobody's happy to see anchovies on a list like this, because nobody thinks they buy anchovies. But you do. They're in the Caesar dressing. They're in the Worcestershire sauce. They're the thing that makes a good pasta sauce taste like it took 4 hours instead of 40 minutes. The anchovy is the most consumed fish that almost nobody admits to eating, and it's under the same Mediterranean pressure hitting sardines, plus a problem of its own. The primary sourcing regions for canned anchovies are the Mediterranean and, increasingly, the coastal waters of Peru and Chile. The Peruvian anchoveta fishery is one of the largest single-species fisheries on the planet, and it is enormously sensitive to El Niño conditions in the Pacific. Warm water pushes the fish deeper and disperses the schools. When that happens, catch volumes fall off a cliff, not gradually, but suddenly. That fishery has repeatedly had seasons closed or curtailed by regulators to protect the biomass. That's responsible management, and it's the right call. But from an American importer's perspective, it means a supply source that can simply stop, mid-season, on a regulatory decision made in another hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Mediterranean side is dealing with the same EU tariff structure that's hitting Italian tomatoes and European pork. The Section 301 expansion of January 2026 caught processed used seafood in its net alongside everything else. So, a volatile primary fishery, a tariffed secondary source, and a tin, usually a small flat one with a high metal-to-product ratio, caught in the steel increase. Anchovies are also a premium format product almost by default. There's no bulk cheap version, which means when costs rise, there's no down-market tier for shoppers to fall back into. The whole category moves together. Open a tin, and the smell is aggressive. Salt, oil, deep fermented fish. It's a smell that divides households. But 2 fillets melted into a hot pan disappear entirely and change everything they touch. This is one of the highest leverage ingredients in cooking, and the tins keep for years. Buy 2 or 3 now. Number 11. Canned wild Alaskan salmon. You've walked right past this one. Practically everyone has. It's parked in the same square foot of shelf it's occupied for as long as you've been shopping there. Silver can. Reasonable price. Nothing about it demands attention. And that quiet certainty, the assumption that it'll simply be there next time, is exactly why it's on this list. Here's what people get wrong. Wild Alaskan salmon isn't a boutique item. It's one of the steadiest, most reliable proteins in the entire aisle. And it's about to get noticeably harder to find at the number you're used to seeing. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game released its April 2026 forecast, and the pink salmon harvest came in projected at 56 million fish. That's the weakest showing in over a decade, and a steep drop from the previous season's run. Why does pink salmon matter so much? Because it's the workhorse. It's the species that fills the overwhelming majority of cans in that category. When a harvest falls off a cliff like that, processors don't shrug and eat the difference. They cut volume. They lift prices. And the accounts running the thinnest margins, which absolutely includes the big box chains, are the first to see their SKUs trimmed or dropped outright. The Bureau of Labor Statistics clocked seafood prices climbing 3.7% in Q1 2026, against the same window a year earlier. That number isn't a forecast. It's already baked into the contract suppliers are hashing out right now for the back half of the year. Retailers lock in their stocking decisions long before a single pallet arrives. Walmart's buyers have already been briefed on what the pack numbers look like. The choices being made in June and July are the choices that determine what the shelf looks like in September and October. Picture opening a can over the sink. That cold, clean smell of Pacific water. The way the pink flesh breaks apart along the grain. Now picture reaching for that same spot in September and finding a hole. It won't be theatrical. One fewer facing, one fewer brand. A slightly worse price on whatever's left. That's how it always goes. Grab 2 or 3 cans while the tag still reflects last year's harvest math. This category has almost no domestic substitute at a comparable price. When it tightens, there's nowhere obvious for shoppers to go. By Q4, those numbers are history. Number 10. Canned chicken. Most people file canned chicken under emergency food. The thing you grab when the fridge is empty and nothing sounds appealing. That mental filing is exactly why it's been underpriced and undervalued for years. And it's precisely the assumption the poultry industry is about to blow up. The USDA's livestock, poultry, and dairy outlook for March 2026 flagged a contraction in broiler production capacity. 2 drivers: stubborn feed cost pressure that won't let up, and flocks still being rebuilt after the avian influenza outbreaks of 2024 and 2025 that tore through commercial operations across 15 states. Feed corn and soybean meal both stayed elevated straight through Q1 2026. Per the USDA's Economic Research Service, processors have been grinding on compressed margins for 18 months, with nothing on the input side suggesting relief is coming. Conagra Brands, which produces the Swanson canned chicken line, said as much on its February 2026 earnings call. Poultry input cost pressure was not expected to ease before the second half of the year. Here's what makes this a real problem, rather than a normal cost cycle. At the same time all of that is happening, demand for shelf-stable protein is running hotter than anyone forecast. Consumer pantry behavior started shifting in late 2025, and it has not shifted back. Input costs climbing, supply tightening, demand accelerating, all simultaneously. That's not a coincidence. That's the textbook setup that triggers SKU rationalization at a major retailer. When margins compress and demand accelerates at the same time, variety dies first. Price increases follow right behind it. Both are already in motion. What shoppers notice first is fewer brands on the shelf. What they notice second is the number on whatever survived. Pop the lid on canned chicken, and the smell is faint. Almost nothing. Cooked protein with the volume turned all the way down. That neutrality is the entire value. It's why it works in pasta, in salad, in soup, in a casserole, in anything. And that versatility is precisely why it evaporates first when households start restocking. It crosses every recipe category there is. Buy a case while the market still treats it like an afterthought. Number 9. Canned Italian tomatoes. Here's something a lot of people have genuinely never thought about. Most of the crushed tomatoes, the whole peeled, the San Marzano sitting on American shelves, they are not from California. They're from Italy. And Italian canned tomatoes are now sitting inside a tariff structure that has made almost everything coming out of the European Union meaningfully more expensive than it was 12 months ago. The Section 301 tariffs, previously applied selectively to U-goods, were expanded in January 2026. The Office of the United States Trade Representative confirmed an effective rate increase covering processed tomato products from Italy and other EU member states. That went live February 1st, 2026. Importers absorbed the first wave through the spring. They usually do. But the second wave, the price adjustment written into retail contracts, is landing right now in the second quarter, which means Walmart's cost from its importers is already materially above what the shelf tag currently says. That gap does not survive. It can't. Importers and retailers are both operating on margins thin enough to read a newspaper through. When the numbers stop lining up, the consumer absorbs the correction at the shelf. That's how it has gone every single time. Crack a good Italian tin, and the smell is almost sweet. Concentrated, faintly acidic, rich with whatever the volcanic soil and coastal sun handed that fruit. That smell carries a price now that it didn't carry last year. Walmart has been in extended renegotiation with multiple Italian tomato suppliers since the tariff was announced. August 1st is when several of those protected pricing periods expire. The domestic alternatives will stay cheaper. That isn't changing. But if you want the imports, the whole peeled, the actual San Marzanos, the window is narrower than it looks. Stock them before the contract floor disappears. Number 8. Canned sardines and mackerel. Nobody gets excited about sardines. You can confirm that yourself in any grocery store just by counting how many people reach for them versus how many walk past. But the people who do buy them know something the rest of the aisle hasn't worked out yet. And that quiet advantage is about to become very visible. North Atlantic mackerel and sardine fisheries operate under bilateral agreements between the United States, Canada, the EU, and Norway. In February 2026, Norway unilaterally raised its mackerel quota claim by 18% above the level agreed under the 2025 multilateral framework, citing updated stock assessments from the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research. The EU and UK filed formal protests in March 2026. What that means for American importers isn't an immediate shortage, it's uncertainty. And uncertainty about supply consistency from your primary sourcing region translates directly into tighter forward buying and thinner variety on any import-dependent shelf. Meanwhile, the American Action Forum published analysis in March 2026 showing that U.S. seafood tariffs on processed fish from Asian suppliers, the secondary sourcing region for sardines, had pushed landed costs up between 22% and 31% year over year, depending on country of origin. When your primary source and your backup source both come under cost pressure at the same moment, buyers don't cut volume first. They cut variety. The specialty formats go first. The flavored tins, the wood smoked, the premium olive oil packs. Then the basics get repriced upward once the specialty options are gone, and displaced demand has nowhere to go but down market. Open a tin of smoked sardines, and it arrives all at once. Salt, smoke, ocean, at full strength. It is not a subtle product, neither is what's happening to the supply chain behind it. Walmart's seafood buyer has fewer suppliers to work with right now than at any point in the last 5 years. Move on the basics before displaced demand narrows your options further. Number 7. Canned evaporated milk. This is the one that genuinely catches people off guard. Evaporated milk looks like the most bulletproof product in the store. It has been on American shelves in essentially unchanged form since the 1880s. It costs almost nothing. It's in every grocery store in the country. It will always be there, except it's made from dairy. And the U.S. dairy supply chain in the first half of 2026 is getting squeezed from 3 directions at once. The USDA's February 2026 dairy products report showed whole milk powder inventories at their lowest level since 2019. Fluid milk production in the top 3 dairy states, California, Wisconsin, and Idaho, came in below seasonal expectations in Q1 2026. That's a combination of herd health issues and the lingering aftermath of the 2025 drought, which gutted forage crop yields across the Mountain West. Then there's the can. The Can Manufacturers Institute reported in January 2026 that steel and aluminum costs remain elevated following the reinstatement of Section 232 tariffs on imported metals, effective January 1, 2026, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. And here's the detail that makes evaporated milk uniquely exposed. It's a low-priced product with a high can-to-product ratio. The packaging represents an outsized share of total landed cost per unit, far more than for something like premium soup or canned meat, where the value of the contents dwarfs the value of the tin. When the can gets more expensive, the cheap cans hurt most. That's the rule. And it keeps showing up on this list. Tilt an open can over a pot, and it pours thick and pale yellow, nothing like the milk it started as. That richness is the product of a specific reduction process, and it's what lets the thing sit at room temperature for 2 full years. That 2-year horizon is exactly why the current window matters. Grab 4 to 6 cans. The price still reflects last year's input costs. It won't by Q4, roughly 2,000 words in now. If you're finding this useful, a like and a comment help enormously, and I read every one. Number 6. Canned coconut milk. Coconut milk has quietly become a staple in a huge number of American kitchens over the last decade. Curries, soups, coffee, baking, dairy-free everything. It went from specialty to standard without most people noticing. And it is almost entirely an import product, sourced overwhelmingly from Thailand. That should set off an alarm, because we've already seen what's happening to Thai goods. Section 301 tariffs on Thai processed food categories were increased effective March 1, 2026, per the USTR's updated schedule released in February. The same schedule that hammered Thai, canned tuna, caught adjacent process categories in its scope. Thailand isn't just a source for canned coconut milk. It is essentially the source for the American market. Cheoko, Aroy, Thai Kitchen, different labels, same country, often the same handful of processing facilities. There is no meaningful domestic alternative. You cannot grow coconuts in Nebraska. There is no California Central Valley for this product. When Thailand gets more expensive, the entire American shelf gets more expensive. Full stop. That's what makes coconut milk structurally different from, say, canned peaches. With peaches, a tariff on an import at least leaves a domestic option standing. With coconut milk, the tariff is the market. There's a second pressure worth flagging. Coconut production across Southeast Asia has been dealing with aging tree stock. A large share of producing palms are past their peak yield years. And replanting is slow, because a new coconut palm takes 6 to 8 years to produce commercially. That's a supply base that cannot respond quickly to a demand signal, even when the price is right. Open a can and it's thick, white, faintly sweet, with that unmistakable tropical smell that sits somewhere between food and sunscreen. Shake it hard first, or the cream separates. It stores for 2 years easily. Buy several cans now, across brands. This category has no escape hatch. Number 5. Canned pineapple. Pineapple runs almost exactly the same playbook as coconut milk, but with a different flag on the container. The dominant sourcing region for canned pineapple sold in the United States is the Philippines, with additional volume from Thailand and Indonesia. Dole and Del Monte both operate substantial Philippine processing operations and have for generations. Same structural problem, no domestic alternative at scale. Hawaiian pineapple production, which once fed the entire American market, collapsed decades ago as processing moved offshore for labor cost reasons. It is not coming back. The plantations are gone. The canneries are gone. So the entire American canned pineapple supply is riding on Southeast Asian imports. And those imports are now sitting inside the same expanded Section 301 tariff structure that caught Thai seafood and Thai processed foods in January and March of 2026. Then there's the can. Pineapple is packed in juice or syrup, which means a heavy liquid dense product in a steel container, high shipping weight, high packaging cost per unit. It gets hit by the 25% steel tariff and by freight economics simultaneously. And there's a third thing, which almost nobody discusses. The Philippines sits directly in the typhoon corridor. Pineapple is a long cycle crop, roughly 18 to 24 months from planting to harvest. A bad storm season doesn't just destroy a harvest, it destroys the next harvest, because the plants that would have produced it are gone, and the replacement cycle is measured in years, not months. That's a supply chain with a 2-year memory. Disruptions don't clear quickly. Open a can of pineapple, and you get that bright, sharp, almost aggressive sweetness, acidic enough to make your mouth water before you've eaten any. It stores for years. It goes into everything from ham glaze to fried rice to a lunchbox. Grab a few while the pre-tariff pack is still on the shelf. Number 4. Canned chili. With beans, walk into any Walmart, and there's an entire section handed over to canned chili. Hormel, Wolf brand, the store label, several others. It feels like abundance is permanently built into this category. It isn't. Hormel Foods reported on its Q1 fiscal 2026 earnings call, released February 2026, that it was experiencing margin compression across its shelf-stable segment, driven by pork input costs running above prior year levels. The USDA reported in January 2026 that U.S. hog inventory had declined 2.1% year over year, a continuation of a contraction building since 2023, as producers responded to sustained losses during the previous cost cycle. Pork is the primary protein in most canned chili formulations, and that trend is not reversing fast. Herd rebuilding takes years, not quarters. At the same time, the bean side has its own problem. The USDA's March 2026 prospective plantings report showed dry bean acreage in the northern plains, the primary domestic growing region, expected to fall 6% in 2026 versus the prior year, as farmers rotated toward commodity crops with stronger near-term margins. A 6% acreage cut doesn't create a shortage overnight. What it creates is tightness. And tightness in a category already absorbing input cost pressure from a second direction is exactly the condition that triggers contract renegotiation at the retail level. That's the pattern that runs through this entire list. It's rarely one catastrophic shock. It's 2 or 3 moderate pressures arriving in the same quarter, in the same product, and compounding. Crack a can of chili and the smell arrives instantly. Warm spice. Tomato. The heaviness of slow-cooked pork underneath. It's one of the very few genuinely complete single-can meals in the store. Buy several across different brands before the contract math catches up to the shelf tag. Number 3. Canned soup. Campbell's is one of the most recognizable brands in American grocery. It has been on shelves in essentially the same form since 1898. It feels like a fixed point, a category where disruption simply doesn't happen. Soup is soup. Soup has always been there. Campbell's Soup Company reported on its Q2 fiscal 2026 earnings call in March 2026 that it was managing sustained input cost pressure across 3 separate areas at once: protein costs, vegetable commodity costs, and steel packaging costs. 3 at once, not 1. The Section 232 tariffs on imported steel, reinstated at 25% effective January 1, 2026, hit the can manufacturing costs Campbell's absorbs on every unit it ships. Every can, every SKU, every shipment. And here's what makes it worse: the part almost nobody accounts for. The Can Manufacturers Institute noted in February 2026 that domestic steel prices also rose in response to the reimposed import tariffs, as domestic producers adjusted pricing to the new floor those tariffs created. So the increase is double-sided. Imported steel costs more. Domestic steel costs more in response. There is no cheap door left to walk through. Campbell's does not absorb that indefinitely. No public company does. They pass it through in price increases negotiated at the next contract renewal. That is the entire mechanism, and it is completely predictable. A can of chicken noodle opened on a cold morning. The steam, the salt and starch smell, the sound of it going into the pot. That combination is wired so deeply into American domestic life that when the increase lands, it's going to feel almost personal. It isn't personal. It's a steel tariff, a wheat cost, and a protein input all touching down on the same product in the same quarter.